Molly. You have a brief moment as the consciousness and life leaves you. What are your last words?
With blood.
Oh, God.
As it kind of slams into his face. He goes, respect. And then twists the blade. The life leaves Molly.
Eyes never shut.
What's up, folks? Mike for CMCC Builds here with the final installment of Campaign 2's Optimizing Critical Role. Here we're going to look at Mollymauk and Kingsley Tealeaf, the purple tiefling with multiple souls played by Taliesin Jaffe, the man with the oldest soul. This will conclude Campaign 2, at which point I will dive into Campaign 1, starting with Laura Bailey's Vexalia. A quick reminder that if you want to see the character sheets for these builds on D&D Beyond, or even vote for upcoming videos, among other cool perks, I would ask that you consider joining my Patreon. Special holiday shout out to my patron, Michael. I really appreciate your support, and to everyone else, please like, subscribe, comment, all the YouTube things. You guys know how this works. Back to the build intro. This one is unique in the sense that we only got to see Molly in play from levels 2 through 5, but we did recently get the Mighty 9 2-shot showcasing Kingsley at level 17. This gives us some insight into where Taliesin was planning to take Molly, but they are technically two separate people, so we can't be entirely certain this is where Molly would have ended up. And to add to the confusion, the available character sheet for Kingsley isn't accurate, as a level 13 Blood Hunter, level 4 Rogue multiclass would not have a 3d6 sneak attack. That said, it does provide a decent guideline for us to use. Interesting note, this will be the first Optimizing Critical Role build to go all the way at 17th level, Tier 4. All previous OCR builds finished at level 16 where the campaign ended. This one level won't change much, but it does give us a glimpse into how the character would shape up in the final stretch of the game. In this video, Molly/Kingsley becomes a well-rounded martial with incredibly strong Nova capabilities and ends up as one of my favorite builds in this channel, which was a pleasant surprise for me. So with that, I think it's time we jump into the build. Taliesin chose a purple variant tiefling with the Devil's Tongue feature for his race, or should we start calling it species? I think I'll hold off until it's official. Devil's Tongue fits the roguish character well, adding 3 spells: Vicious Mockery, 2nd level Charm Person at 3, and Enthrall at 5. Jaffe cast the spells 31 times from levels 2 through 5, so it's not like he didn't make use of them, but he died. And we're trying not to do that. That's kind of a big piece of optimization. And one easy way to not kick the bucket is to get out of melee or stay out of melee, when you only have a 15 armor class like Molly did. Fortunately, the Tiefling variant comes with 2 other options. Hellfire gives fire spells that we don't care about, and the Winged Tiefling has bat-like wings providing a 30-foot fly speed. That's where we want to be, especially as a dex-based character. Mike, you're making this a ranged character? That doesn't fit Molly at all. No, this won't be a ranged first character, but when you're about to die, or even better, when you're struggling in melee, take the disengage or dodge action, fly into the air and try to find a tree for some cover against forthcoming ranged attacks. Options matter. And how cool would Mollymauk be with tattooed wings escaping from under his coat in the creepiest, most dramatic way possible? I'm all for it. Winged Tiefling it is. Ability scores present an interesting dilemma. The original Blood Hunter, the OG, used Wisdom as a secondary stat. Thematically as hunters, that probably makes the most sense. Taliesin then put his second highest roll into Wisdom. At some point long after Molly was gone, Matt released the new and updated version of the Blood Hunter, this one using Intelligence as a secondary stat. After that, and I didn't realize this until I made this build, the option to use Intelligence or Wisdom for your secondary stat was added. The closest feature to this that I can think of would be the Battlemaster's option to use Strength or Dex for maneuver save DC. Even with this variant Hemocraft ability score change, Intelligence is still required for multiclassing, so we have to keep that in mind. The ability score spread is a decent one, just a bit better than the point buy method. Taliesin rolled a 17, 15, 14, 11, 10, and 9. A perfectly fine spread with 3 good stats. We just need to look out for multiclassing into classes that benefit from a 4th or even 5th stat, which is unfortunately what Tal did with the Kingsley build. That 17 goes right into Dexterity with the 9 in Strength, 15 in Constitution, 14 in Intelligence, 11 Wisdom, and 10 in Charisma. With the optional Racial ASI, put the +2 into Dexterity, bringing that to a 19, and the +1 into Intelligence, raising that to a 15 right alongside Constitution. Don't worry, we'll even those out in due time. These rolls in this build provide a lot of opportunity to take advantage of the fantastic and fun half feats, most but not all from Tasha's. With the background, Molly is a charlatan, and that works fine to round out the character's story and add some decent skills and abilities. I would strongly consider getting the stealth skill in this character, which is better than both deception and sleight of hand, but in this case, I can't completely justify switching out either Deception or Sleight of Hand for the more powerful stealth skill. Optimizing toward character rather than strictly power will force us to make these tough decisions. For equipment, we have some tough choices to make. The Bloodhunter's Crimson Right feature is a strong ability that really pushes the player to get as many attacks as possible to take full advantage of the additional damage die. Two of the most common ways to do this are through the Polar Master and Crossbow Expert feats. Again, if we're optimizing strictly for power, there is no question this build should be a Crossbow Expert sharpshooting ranged combatant using Tiefling wings to stay as far away from melee as possible. But that doesn't completely or even competently cover the Molly character. He's more of that roguish swashbuckler, which doesn't require that we take either the rogue class or swashbuckler subclass, more on that later. But it does mean we need to mix it up in melee with either a scimitar or rapier. Crossbows can still work because ranged combat will certainly be a thing. Take a light crossbow or even a hand crossbow for that pistol flavor without an actual gun, which clearly veers a little bit too close to Percy. For the primary weapon, rather than Molly's scimitar, we're going with the rapier, which can't be used to dual wield without a feat, and we're not going to take the feat because dual wielding is bad in 5e, as most of us already know. It eats into our bonus action, which may not be bad at first, but it will be very soon, as this build will feature some excellent uses of that bonus action. For armor, take studded leather because it gives the exact armor class of scale mail without the downside to stealth. I would probably take a shield here, especially at lower levels, but I have a feeling Taliesin would be in and out of melee, and using a crossbow with a shield just doesn't work with that style of play. Taking a shield would limit the flexibility of the build, so we'll pass despite the hit to AC. For class, we're going to stick with Molly's 1 through 5 Bloodhunter progression. For the skill proficiencies, Molly only had 2 from Bloodhunter, Acrobatics and Insight. The new Bloodhunter gives 3 skill proficiencies. Again, I would have loved for stealth to be one of them, but it's not, so we'll take athletics. Molly has a low strength score, so bumping that skill goes a long way to making him capable in many of those strength-based tasks like climbing or even grappling. For Hunter's Bane, we'll obviously take intelligence rather than wisdom. At this level, Bloodhunters get 1 blood curse as opposed to the 2 Molly had. Here I would take the same blood curse of the eyeless that Molly chose. When a creature you can see within 30 feet of you makes an attack, you can use your reaction to roll 1 Hemocraft die and subtract the number rolled from the creature's attack roll. You can amplify this to apply it to all the creature's attack rolls until the end of the creature's turn. A decent ability that gets better as the number of attacks an enemy has increases, something you'll face at higher levels. At second level, with the fighting style, we're going to pass on 2-weapon fighting and instead take dueling. This gives a +2 to each attack we make with a melee weapon held with one hand. Dual wielding only gives a bump to a single bonus action attack. This fighting style bumps every single attack. The more attacks we make, the better this ability becomes. That will become a recurring theme with this build. Here, Bloodhunters get their primary feature, the one that makes this entire class tick, Crimson Right. This adds an extra damage die to each attack. Each attack. There it is again. The best right is Right of the Storm. Lightning damage is the least resisted damage type of the options available. Molly had Right of the Frozen, but cold damage is nearly as bad as fire damage in terms of number of monsters that are resistant or immune. We'll get Molly's Right of the Frozen eventually, but not now. At this point, the Hemocraft die is a D4, but scales all the way to a D10 at level 17. The damage type won't matter much because at level 3, we're going with the Order of the Ghost Slayer, the same as Molly. This gives Right of the Dawn, which switches the damage type to Radiant, which is one of the best damage types in the entire game. You add an additional damage die when fighting undead, again, for each attack. This build will just mow through undead. Bright light out to 20 feet and resistance to necrotic damage, which is a good resistance to have. We'll also get a few more resistances before we're done with this build. We want to be strong both offensively and especially defensively. We gotta stay alive. This ability does both. At this level, we also get the Curse Specialist, which gives an additional use of the Blood Maledict feature, and the curses work on creatures without blood. Kind of important if you're a hunter of the undead. Mechanically, this makes it so your primary class feature isn't useless against the hordes of enemies that don't have blood. At 4th level, the first ASI feat, and here we're going to max out Dexterity by taking the Piercer feat. This brings that Dex to 20, which also allows us to re-roll a damage die once per turn. Eventually, with multiple attacks per round, the chance of rolling below average on a die becomes fairly high. In those cases, you'll want to re-roll. It's always better to re-roll the bigger die, and whenever you roll a 1. This feat also allows for an additional damage die when a crit lands. Remember, this applies to both the rapier's damage and the crossbow's damage, so it doesn't limit the build's weapon flexibility there. It does remove scimitars as a viable option, but short swords are still in play. At level 5, extra attack, and this is where we saw the end of Molly. I believe Taliesin would have probably stuck with Bloodhunter here, but this really is a good jumping point. We're going rogue, Mike! Nope, not rogue. One of the pervasive ideas I want to dispel with this channel is that classes need to be chosen because of the character thematics or personality. Yes, Molly is roguish, the build has a certain swashbuckling flair that Tal leans into for the Mighty 9 2-shot, But Rogue won't necessarily add to that. That's all in playstyle and personality given to the character. Rogue's primary feature is Sneak Attack, which focuses damage on a single attack. That's exactly the opposite of what we want with this build. We want ways to raise the damage on each attack and increase the number of attacks. Here, we're going to multi-class into Fighter for 4 levels. With a fighting style, we'll take Defense, again, making us harder to kill. Archery or even blind fighting are interesting options, but I'm going to err on the side of caution here. At level 2, fighters get the Great Action Surge. This allows us to take another action, doubling our attacks. This is essential for the Burst Nova round we're building towards. At 3, fighters get their Martial Archetype. Going in, I was fairly certain Battlemaster was the obvious choice. Then I thought about getting more attacks. Which fighter subclass does that better than any other? Especially single round extra attacks? What's my favorite fighter subclass that I've been begging the cast of Critical Role to take for over a year? Don't do it, Mike! Oh, I'm doing it. We're taking Echo Knight. It's the strongest fighter subclass, it's unique to Exandria, and in story, it's birthed from the Kryn Dynasty and Wildmount, the continent where Campaign 2 is set. And it just happens to perfectly complement some key Bloodhunter features. Could Molly realistically learn Echo Knight abilities? Caleb certainly learned Dunamancy. There's absolutely no reason why Matt and Taliesin couldn't work this multi-class into the story. Echo Knight's powers derive from Dunamantic sources, so whether it would be Essek teaching Molly, or his younger brother Varen, himself an Echo Knight, or Quanna Kryn at the behest of the Bright Queen, or even a tiny seed planted by Thuron in episode 13 during Molly's interrogation of him moments before his death. Whatever they would have chosen, I'm sure it would have been awesome. But not as awesome as you guys. Thanks for sticking around this long. What exactly does Echo Knight do for this build? Well, the Echo of course gives a ton of maneuverability options. It allows Molly to move in and out of combat via teleportation to avoid attacks of opportunity. It allows Molly to attack through the Echo so he can stay out of danger longer. It doubles the possibility of opportunity attacks by allowing those strikes through the Echo space in addition to the character's normal reach. All of this via a mostly free bonus action. Remember, your Crimson Right lasts until a short rest, no duration, no concentration. It's kind of an insanely powerful ability because it lacks these basic restrictions that nearly all similar abilities in the game have. So power this up before combat and keep it going until your rest to keep the bonus actions free mid-combat. As amazing as that is, it's not even the best feature on this build. That honor goes to Unleash Incarnation, which allows Echo Knights to take additional attacks, Constitution modifier times per long rest. That's just 2 now, but it will improve to 3 next level. And this isn't limited to once per turn. Again, like nearly all similar abilities in the game, it just lacks that basic restriction. This further fuels our Nova round. At level 9, Fighter 4, we need to round off Constitution to get more from Unleash Incarnation. And we have just the half feat to do it. Infernal Constitution is a half feat available only to Tieflings, and Molly is a Tiefling. Gives a +1 to Con, bringing that to 16, bumping hit points, and the Con modifier to +3. It also gives resistance to cold and poison damage. That gives Molly 4 total resistances at this point. Fire through the racial feature, Necrotic from the Ghost Slayer subclass, and now cold and poison. We're not going to double up on extra attacks, so Tal should dive back into Bloodhunter for 8 more levels, right through to level 17. There's really no need for Rogue on this build. The one reason we'd want Rogue would be for Cunning Action, which is largely redundant for an Echo Knight. At Bloodhunter 6, Brand of Castigation allows a creature damaged by Molly to be tracked along with dealing Hemocraft damage to the creature whenever it attacks him or an ally within 5 feet. That's only 2 damage now, but that will increase shortly too. This ability is okay, I don't love it, but there are some cool RP opportunities with it, and it can even be used on an ally if you nick their arm before they go ahead to scout or have to be separated from the main group for any reason. Molly also gets an additional Blood Curse. Blood Curse of the Marked is absolutely perfect for this build. As a bonus action, mark a creature until the end of your turn. That's key. Whenever you hit the cursed creature with a weapon for which you have an active Crimson Right, you roll an additional Hemocraft die when determining the extra damage from the right. That's a d6 now and eventually will be a d8. Doubling that is like smiting on every single attack for the round. With Action Surge and Unleash Incarnation, that's 7 attacks. 3d8 plus 7. And we'll sprinkle a little more on top of that in just 2 levels. Don't forget this is a bonus action and this build is now very bonus action heavy and getting even more cluttered soon. Taliesin does tend to get flustered with a lot of stuff happening, but he generally has a solid grasp on his abilities, so I think he can handle this with some practice. At Hunter 7, Aether Walk is a very cool utility feature that allows Molly to walk through walls or even other creatures. Bloodhunters also get another Crimson Right damage type. Molly is dealing radiant damage at this point, so the choice doesn't matter much, but going with Frozen, Tal's original pick, is fine. Level 12, Bloodhunter 8 gives another ASI feat, and here we need to round off Intelligence. The best half feat for that is Fey Touched. A single use of Misty Step without any spell slots is generally pretty weak, And with an unlimited teleport option via the Echo, it would seem this ability is even worse, but in fact, the opposite is true. In most cases, it is correct to assume that the Echo's teleport functionality will be used. But what about the situation where there is no Echo? It's been destroyed or it's a non-combat scenario, and Molly needs to teleport right then. Guard's about to spot him, cave is collapsing, door is closing, whatever it is, he can't take a bonus action to create an Echo. And then another bonus action to teleport through it, that's 2 rounds. In those situational instances where you need to teleport this quickly without an Echo, or if the 15-foot teleport isn't enough, Misty Step will be the move. It's situational enough that 1 use per day might actually be good enough. In addition to Misty Step, Fey Touch also gives a divination or enchantment spell, and this time we're all in on those divinations. Bless and enchantment, or Gift of Alacrity, are the usual picks here. The latter seems a perfect fit for a Critical Role campaign, given that it's a Dunamancy spell. It lasts 8 hours, so a single use spell is great at that duration. But we want Hunter's Mark here. The flavor synergy is perfect for a Blood Hunter, and here Holly can use it to add more fuel to that Nova round. Don't forget this spell lasts for an hour and is concentration, but Molly will often be out of melee, flying, or using cover, with his Echo taking much of the damage. Concentration shouldn't be difficult to maintain even without Constitution saving throw proficiency. At Blood Hunter 9, Grim Psychometry provides advantage on history checks to recall information on an object or a location with the qualifier that it has a sinister or tragic past. This is bad. It'd be pretty awful as a level 3 feature, and it's significantly worse at level 9. Without the qualifier, this ability is terrible, but with it, it's borderline unusable. That said, I like the flavor, it's cool. It should have been a level 3 ribbon. Next level, Blood Hunters get Dark Augmentation, which gives a bonus to Strength, Dexterity, and Constitution saving throws equal to the Hemocraft modifier, which is just increased to +3. Further cementing Molly's defensive capabilities, this build now has proficiency in Dex and Intelligence saves, another permanent +3 to Dex, and the same +3 to Strength, Molly's worst stat, and Con, boosting concentration checks in the process. This build's already strong defense just got much better. Blood Hunters also get an additional Blood Curse, Molly's final one. There are some interesting options here, but Blood Curse of Exposure allows Taliesin to deal with any resistances or immunities that may limit the primary Blood Hunter feature's ability to dish out damage. At Blood Hunter 11, Ghost Slayers get Brand of Sundering. Whenever a branded creature is hit by your Crimson Right weapon, it deals 1 additional Hemocraft die of right damage, and they can't move through creatures or objects. The latter clause primarily affects undead, which will be very situational, but thematically appropriate. The former part of that feature, the extra Hemocraft die, is quite strong. That's a D8. We'll go over exactly what that means in terms of damage in just a moment. At character level 16, Blood Hunter 12, Molly gets the final ASI feat, and here Taliesin should increase either Constitution or Intelligence. Bumping Con improves hit points, concentration saves on the single use of Hunter's Mark, and gives an additional Unleash Incarnation attack. Intelligence increases the damage on the Brand of Castigation and the bonus to saving throws from Dark Augmentation. You can make a strong argument for either. For me, Con barely edges out Intelligence. Finally, at character level 17 and Blood Hunter 13, the Brand of Tethering. This doubles the damage from Brand of Castigation, which kind of functions as a level 1 or 2 Armor of Agathis that never runs out against the branded target, and since it also damages attackers against your allies next to you, it's quite a bit better than a low-level Agathis cast. Beyond that, it prevents the branded creature from dashing, damages them if they teleport, and forces a wisdom save for them to even do so. A nice final feature for Molly on this build, especially if Caleb were to use a Wall of Force or a similar spell to shut down an enemy. Now that we've gone through levels 1 through 17, let's have a look at the damage and what this build can do. The base rapier damage is 1d8, with a +5 from Dex, and a +2 from the dueling fighting style. Of course, Molly would have a magic rapier by level 17, but we'll ignore that for now. Molly's Crimson Right does another d8 at this point, and should be applied pre-combat. Brand of Sundering adds another d8 on top of that, no action required. Throw a Hunter's Mark on the target for an additional d6 to all attacks. If you want a Nova, the next round, toss a Blood Curse of the Marked as a bonus action on top of that for yet another d8. The Piercer feat allows Tal to reroll the Rapier and Hunter's Mark portion of the damage, which will often be a 1 with the number of attacks this build gets, and it increases the critical hit die by 1. That's 48 plus 1d6 plus 7 for every non-crit attack. If you're facing an undead creature, make that 5d8 plus 1d6 plus 7. That's a level 3 smite on all strikes landed until the end of turn. How many attacks though? Extra attack is 2, Action Surge doubles that to 4, and Unleash Incarnation with an 18 Constitution doubles that again to 8. 8 attacks, each one at 48 plus 1d6 plus 7 against non-undead, and 5d8 plus 1d6 plus 7 against undead. Against non-undead creatures with the average tier 4 AC of 19, And without any of the many magic weapons Matt gives to his players, Molly can now Nova for 161.6 damage in that round, up to 223.3 damage if Taliesin can get advantage from a bow stunning strike, a Yasha battle cry from Zealous Presence, or even just getting a flanking position. If he's fighting an undead, the average bumps to 186.8 without advantage and 258.4 with advantage. The most damage anyone on Critical Role has ever done in a single round was 197 points of damage by Percy in the Search for Grog. Caveat, Hemorrhaging Crit added another 52 points at the end of the turn, along with multiple magic items using the attacks, so count that as you will. Point being that 258 is the average turn of damage once per long rest against an undead creature. The amount of damage Molly is now capable of dishing out, honestly, is quite shocking. And add to that, right from level 1, Tealeaf fares much better defensively with a higher dexterity, resource-free flight, bumps to saving throws, 4 damage type resistances, and the amazing Echo Knight options. This build is well-rounded, thematically appropriate, and just really damn cool. Okay, that's a wrap on this build and Optimizing Critical Role Campaign 2. Be on the lookout for Campaign 1 in 2023. Thanks to everyone for watching. If you liked the video, please like the video. If you want to see more, give a subscribe. As always, comment below with your own ideas and let me know what you think. See you here next time, folks.